All right, everyone. Welcome back to Kente Korner, your favorite casual Hoya basketball podcast. It's been a while, but I'm back. I'm Bobby Bancroft, and we have a new twist in that we are adding video. We're sort of joining a network of podcasts, and I'm here with Matt Moderno to talk a little bit more about that. Matt, what's up, man?
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to have you guys on the network here and happy to talk a little Georgetown hoops here.
So Kente Corner's kind of been sitting there for a little bit, various reasons on a hiatus, I suppose. Needed basketball season to get back. Georgetown, completely new roster. So instead of just speculating over a bunch of players we've never seen play together, wanted to kind of let the season start a little bit. But Matt and I, also with Andrew, the Casual Hoya himself, kind of talked about forming this relationship. So we're still going to have the podcast where it's been, wherever you get your audio podcast. You can still get us. I'm going to put this version up, but we're just adding this video component. Matt, you've been doing podcasts for a long time, particularly with former Georgetown great Jahadi White. Can you tell us a little bit about the network that you've started and, what's going on with that?
Yeah, for sure. And again, really excited to have you guys. And I think we're trying to build something here. So it just seemed like there was sort of, a missing element here of like a one-stop shop for local college and pro basketball content, especially from the video front. There's a lot of sort of independent podcasts doing their own thing. And just video seems like it's taking off across the board. Everybody's trying to add a YouTube component. So thought we could kind of like build a one place for a lot of these different podcasts to start from. And that way everybody's not kind of building up their own individual following from scratch, on the video side. At least if you kind of have, your own section of a more established place, it'll bring a lot of eyes into one place. And, hopefully we can kind of cross promote and cross pollinate. And as more of these local teams start to play each other, there's, easy connections to make with hosts of the other podcasts. So I've been doing my Wizards podcast with Jahadi White. It's Believe in Wizards, BLEAV, for anybody that's a masochist and likes to watch the Wizards and Georgetown. That's a sick double combo there for anybody. But Jahadi and I do once a week on what's going on with the Wizards, and every once in a while we sprinkle a little Georgetown in there too. But he's the best dude, and the Wizards are bad right now too. So we've been adding a little more, college basketball related stuff throughout the other shows here, and just figured, hey, like why not put them all under one roof? So we have a GW podcast going, the GW Basketball Insider. We're going to have a Maryland podcast going here too, and then I'm doing one with the Maryland TBT team called the Shell Shock Experience. So for any, dual Georgetown, Maryland fans, if that even exists, we'll be talking to a lot of, Maryland alums and things like that, former players, just to, kind of build some hype for their TBT team over the summer and get some of the, the famous former Terps in there as well. So Jahadi and I were just kind of talking about like, hey man, like we got to have other stuff to talk about. The Wizards are going to be rebuilding for the next couple of years. So opportunity there to just kind of sprinkle in some different elements as we go.
I think Ben Standing might be the only person I know that seems to have a rooting interest, at least on the side, for Georgetown and Maryland. So there are people that exist. Obviously, Qudus Wahab possibly falls into that Venn diagram. Just want to point out, I know that this has been an issue in the past, and I'm going to try to fix it. This is Sunday night. I've got both of the lights on in this room. I know that I'm not coming across great on the video. That might be good for some people, I suppose, but I am aware before the jokes get out there that there's some sort of lighting issue I need to figure out in this room. It's not the first time this has happened, but let's try to make it one of the last times.
You just need to make it a little darker, and if Georgetown keeps losing, it can be this sort of like witness protection vibe you have going. Like we don't want people to see your full face as a Georgetown fan. It's better than putting the brown shopping bag over your face.
Okay, so Matt, I think I've missed more Georgetown games this year, and at the end of last year than I had like the last 20 years combined between the season ticket holder and then a member of the media. But you actually did get a chance to get out there on Saturday for the Notre Dame game. Obviously, Georgetown was 2-0. Thomas Sorber had done, just a tremendous job. Was, Adam Zagorius tweeting about he's like, he's an NBA pick. It's like, hey, can you guys just wait a second?
Yeah, give us a year or two of this guy at least.
Yeah, can we get like five seconds? PV's come over, has made an immediate impact from TCU, just as people expected. Their first two games kind of went sort of the same script. Slow start, Georgetown wore them down with talent. Finally Saturday, again, I couldn't make it. So disappointing. However, you were there. Pretty good crowd eventually showed up, is what it looked like on TV. But sort of, unfortunately, the same old Georgetown from last year and even previous years kind of showed up in that other team was ridiculously hot from three. Yeah. Georgetown couldn't defend. These are sort of triggering elements to basketball that, if you're a Hoya fan, you sometimes you can't fall asleep because you're thinking about these things. It's weird for me to say, like, again, I wasn't at the game. What was it like? What was the experience, and how did it feel to what seemed like a pretty good crowd?
It got better. It was a very slow start, I would say. And I actually tweeted something out like, hey, I would have thought there'd honestly just be a better showing for Georgetown. I know the last couple of years have been tough on a lot of fans. The interest is at a low point, but coming in 2-0, like Notre Dame's got some local fans here too. So I thought just it would be, 6,000-7,000 in there at tip off. And realistically, it was probably 3 or 4 at game time. Like the picture I took was right as the, pregame warm-up clock expired right at tip-off, and there was a lot of empty seats. And I would say about 10 minutes into the game, the crowd almost probably close to doubled. So just, I know sometimes 1 o'clock on a Saturday is tough, especially for people bringing families in there. It's just, that's not like sort of the most prompt arriving crowd. And you see that at Wizards games and stuff too. So it got a little better. I was probably there about an hour early. And the question I got from like 4 or 5 fans as I walked past them was, hey, do you know where Thomas Sorber is? Like that was sort of like, then you saw that a buzz was building. Was he going to play? And Georgetown didn't have anything in the media material about what was going on with him. So it sounded like a bug went through the team. A couple guys were sick. Sorber was sort of the last affected and probably hit the hardest. So he didn't start that game, eventually came in, played really well for a bit and gave them a real boost, and then never touched the ball again for the rest of the game, despite playing a decent amount of minutes, which if I were a Georgetown fan, like a diehard Georgetown fan, that would have been the most frustrating thing for me watching that game. Was just, you had Malik Mack and Jaden Epps that just sort of just dominating the ball essentially. Mack went 5 of 15, Epps went 5 of 17. And then in the post game, Epps got up there and talked about how, like, guys have to move the ball around. Guys have to be unselfish. Guys have to get everybody else touches. And it was just sort of like, I don't know. I watched way too many Bradley Beal press conferences in this press room that this is starting to sound like super familiar. So it was just frustrating to watch, I think, kind of across the board.
Yeah, obviously, when you're coming off the type of season that Georgetown had last year, there's a lot of question marks. The whole roster is basically new. And, you mentioned Malik Mack coming in. The idea was, how can he coexist with Jaden Epps? And the idea that, both ball dominant guys, they're on the shorter side, not in real life, but on a basketball court at this high level, their stature is not super huge. And, how can you defend with guards like that? You're right. Ron Bailey from Hoya Report, actually, I watched the press conference. He asked that question in a way, how do you get the ball to stop sticking? I thought it was a great question, particularly to Epps, because that's kind of where the ball does stick. And, the big question with him is, was his season last year, did he have to play like that because of the roster, because of the lack of options? And it seems like there are other options on this team, with the freshmen and some of the transfers. And did he have to revert to sort of, I have to do this myself? Because he is really talented. They just have to find a way to win with him, being so ball dominant, or just, taking so many shots. Coming back to the idea that people are asking you, where was Thomas Sorber? As a veteran of covering Georgetown forever, basically, it's really important to get there about an hour early and just kind of like take the program out there, take the game notes, I should say, not the program, and just count and just, try to figure out where people are, and then try to ask someone for an official word. You might get it, you might not. Usually TV gets it somehow, so you kind of figure out what's going on with them. But unfortunately with Georgetown, and he was, Fielder was out the other day, the same situation. It always does, unfortunately, seem to be something. And coming off the, like I said, Sorber's getting, not just local attention, but national attention. For sure. After his, making the All Big East Team of the Week and Freshman of the Week and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. But other than that, what did you think about did the crowd stay? Was it, I think for Georgetown, and the problem you have is you can do all these things. You can market, you can do X, Y, and Z, but you have to win. And when you have that many people there, and it looked like the students had a good turnout, you have to give them a reason to come back. Now, obviously, losing to Notre Dame is a lot different than losing to Dartmouth or losing to American or Holy Cross or, all these teams that they've lost to in the past. What was sort of the vibe that was there? Did you get the idea that the frustration was boiling over, or was it more of just like, well, here we go again?
There was definitely a point midway through the second half where you could see people starting to head for the exits. And there were a couple times where it just felt like, okay, if they could get a stop here, maybe they could make a run. And you mentioned sort of the small backcourt, and that was definitely a factor in this particular game. And Notre Dame's not rolling out like a huge backcourt either. Like you've got Marcus Burton that's like, 5'11" maybe on a good day. Braden Shrewsbury's not huge. Matt Alaco, who killed them, isn't like the biggest, most athletic dude in the world. So they shouldn't have been able to like take advantage of the Georgetown guards necessarily. But like Epps was dying on every screen that, he should have gone around. And like, I think he did try, but it looks like he just like doesn't know how to defend. And PV got in some foul trouble. I think that really hurt them. And Cooley talked about that in the post game of like, you need PV out there. And like I said, Sorber gave them a little bit of an emotional burst. He gave the crowd an emotional burst because he just sort of like, came in and just was active right away and started getting like hands on stuff. And you're like, okay, like a couple tip-ins, like, all right, like maybe this is what they need, but they could just sort of never really like get a hold and sort of get their teeth into the game here. And this is a better team. And I think you could tell like just a couple fans I talked to afterwards, it was just like, we should be better than this. Like Notre Dame didn't look 25 points better than us. Like that was sort of the recurring theme. And I actually agree with that. I think they had a couple shots that didn't go in that you would think would go in, right? Some open good looks that they eventually created. And especially when Sorber was out there, he drew so much attention. I think you started to see like the guards get, a little more space to operate, but they just couldn't get into the paint. It just seemed like that was a real issue for them is just Notre Dame was trying to keep them, away from the paint for the guards. And that really just kind of clogged everything up. You ended up with like a lot of deep threes and that's deflating for a crowd, right? When guys are clanging three after three and then not getting stopped. So they would chip away, get it down to like 16 or 17, need a big stop, and there'd be a long offensive rebound. And, Matt Alaco would hit a three for Notre Dame. And you just be like, all right, well, we're just never going to like kind of get ourselves fully into this game. And I think that eventually sort of seemed to wear on people. And somebody for Notre Dame hit a backbreaking three late. And you just saw like, all right, the next time out, like a bunch of people started to kind of leave at the same time.
Yeah, I think after Epps and Mac, who, combined to make 7 threes, I think another question, like I said, a lot of questions when you have the season like they did last year. And you've had, a lot of those seasons together, only one under Cooley. We can't go back too far, I suppose. The whole roster's flipped over. But the idea is like, who else can make a three? They seem like they brought in a lot of athletic guys. I don't know if we know enough maybe about the freshmen. Drew McKenna is a kid that was on the team for half of the season last year. Mulready's come in, the local kid, Caleb Williams. I don't think any of the transfers, Jordan Burks or Curtis Williams, are going to be a 3-point, but someone else has to make threes besides the backcourt. And I think that's going to be a question mark the whole year. Like, can they win? Can other guys hit shots to sort of, maybe open things up? And that's going to be, I don't know. It seems like in 2024, 2025, you have to play the style that, if you're going to take that many threes, obviously you need to make some. And Epps and Matt combined for 7 of the 8 made 3-pointers that Georgetown made.
Just on that real quick, like I've seen Caleb Williams play when he's at Sidwell Friends, and I mean, it's a high school line and he's bigger than most of the dudes guarding him, but he made shots. Like I think that eventually will be something he'll be able to do, but his 14 minutes, he didn't really do much offensively. I actually thought he was pretty good and active defensively, but I think he only took 1 shot, and it was like a 8-footer or something like that. And then Micah Peavy, I think, is actually a better shooter than he's shown, throughout his college career. Like he's a sub 30% 3-point shooter, but
they need it.
Yeah,
They
it
need
doesn't
it.
look bad, and when I watched them practice, like, he was drilling threes, but, you gotta do it on the court at some point here too, so, gotta proof is in the pudding, I guess.
Yeah, well, Cooley's got to figure out who his rotation is. Obviously, you can't play 10, 11 guys as much
Right.
as, I think every Twitter thread or, message board thread always gets into the idea of spreading out minutes between, 10, 11, 12 guys. That's not really how basketball works. Usually it's like 8.5, right?
Mhm.
So that's where you got to figure out, like, can Caleb get a part of regular rotation? Can Mulready get a part of the regular rotation? And McKenna, who I think McKenna is a big player because Georgetown and Cooley's strategy, it seems to be a little bit like, well, maybe we can't get a 4 or a 5-star recruit, but if we can get a guy to come in early.
Mhm.
They have 2 more guys on their roster this year that are basically have come in early. I think they call it green shirting.
Yeah.
McKenna did that. I think it's important for McKenna to get opportunity to play so
Mhm.
that these other guys, these kids, I should say, right? They're 18. These other kids that come in and you say, hey, look, we want you to come in early to learn the system and get better. Well, you need to be able to point to something and say, this guy did it and look at him now.
Yep.
Because now if you red shirt or green shirt, whatever you want to call it, and don't play, it's the portal era.
Mhm.
I mean, anything can happen, but I think that the strategy could work. It's just not something that you're seeing a lot of teams do, and Ed's definitely trying to do it that way. We'll see if it works. It's definitely sort of, it's kind of a lame term, but sort of outside the box thinking a little bit. So no cheating. Ken Palm knocked, because of the blowout nature of the game. I think Ken Palm had it as a 1-point Georgetown win, 50-50 toss-up type situation.
Mhm.
I love Ken Palm. Some of the guys that regularly come on Kente Corner love Ken Palm. The blowout loss knocked them down a little bit. What were your expectations coming in for Georgetown this season?
I just seen him at that first practice before the season. I was like, wow, this team is like noticeably more athletic than last year.
Oh, yeah.
And like that was like that's working for a lot of teams, like beat people up on the offensive boards, be athletic, press more, you got more bodies, like maybe they can actually just cycle through people and we won't maybe beat you with quality, but maybe we could beat you with quantity of just like we're throwing long athletic bodies at you. And maybe these two guards can just like generate enough offense to kind of keep us going. And if they shoot enough, maybe these other guys can get it off the glass. Like,
Okay.
I think that's kind of what I was banking on, of just them being better than last year's team. And I still think that's the case, but there's just so little depth from a scoring perspective and like a generating shots perspective, even, that you can't survive one of Epps and Mac having a bad night, let alone both. Like, you're not going to beat anyone in the Big East if both guys are struggling, and it's going to be hard enough if one of them is sort of off. But I think there'll be like more wins this year when you get both guys going. Sorber has a big game here or there, and they'll beat a team or two that I think people are surprised by, just because those are microwave guys and they can get it going. And, there was a stretch where like Epps hit 2 threes in a row, and you're like, okay, like we've got it down to 12. Like, is this the opportunity where they'll make a little run here? But like I said, they couldn't get enough stops. So if he can get them like kind of cleaned up defensively, guys like PV can stay on the floor. You get Sorber kind of back at 100% here, once the little bug moves through. I do think that they're going to at least be like friskier than last season.
For sure. So before the Notre Dame game, Ken Palm had them, and this is a record that I said I would absolutely sign up for.
Sure.
They had them at 16-15, 7-13 in the league.
Yeah.
I think the last, 3 years, I think the record in the Big East is something like
4-52 or
yeah, something just, just a number that doesn't even make sense, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's hard to believe that's even possible. And it is. We've sat through a lot of those. So it went down to 13-18, 5-15. Obviously, it's only 3 games. So a blowout loss when it was expected to be a toss-up is just killing your metrics.
Yeah.
So I totally understand that. But I think that a season like that would be tough. I think it does need to be closer to that 7-13 record in the league. And I think that's possible. You know why? Because I've watched a lot of the Big East basketball so far this year. And there's a group that Georgetown's with.
Yeah.
DePaul looks better, but they're still DePaul. Sure. Villanova doesn't look very good. Providence has escaped embarrassment in all of their games.
Mm-hmm.
Seton Hall struggling to score 50. Butler is not really moving it. So where the last couple of years there's kind of been like a real soft bottom with Georgetown and DePaul, it seems like that soft bottom has expanded. So I think that they do have the opportunity to get, I think I think I'll split the difference. I think six wins in the league would be something that you can say, look, we've started in a really bad place. I know that it's not all about the number. It's about the way that it looks in the process. And, they had some games last year that they kind of gave away at the end. I mean, Xavier, Seton Hall, they played St. John's well. There was opportunities there, but, the same old themes sort of kept coming true. But I think for Ed to really go out there and say, we made progress. This is a place where we've got good NIL, allegedly, reportedly by some people. We can win here, and at some point we can restart this whole Georgetown brand. I think that they have to find a way to get to that 6-7 win area, and they've got a bunch of games coming up at home before they travel to Morgantown to try to get right. The big part of the season, also, like I mentioned earlier, not losing to that Dartmouth, that American. Who else am I thinking about? Holy Cross, which might have been analytically the worst loss in Georgetown history since all these sites sort of popped up. But I think that's where the progress is going to be made, and then eventually at the end of the day, not losing guys for whatever reason.
Yep, that's huge.
Right. Like keeping these guys here. Now, if a guy
losing the right guys, at least, like if the certain guys aren't working out here,
or
like
for the right reasons, Jeff Green is just hanging on by a thread in the NBA. God bless him. It's unbelievable. But at some point you need to put another guy in the league, right? Your 7 went off to Turkey, and, I'm not counting McClung because his last college work was not at Georgetown and all that kind of stuff. So, at some point, if a guy were to leave early, you don't want it. I'm not jinxing anyone. I know everybody wants to see as much Sorber as possible. But that would be, an acceptable reason, right? Like you got to keep your core together. And I think that's going to get interest in the program. It's going to get interest in Kente Korner. It's going to get interest in me getting a better lighting situation, and everything is going to come together. Well, Matt, I really just wanted to get this out here. Andrew is busy, and I want to get this going, and this is going to happen periodically. We're going to try to get one of these out a week. Again, it's going to be, you can find it where you found the Kente Korner. I'm still on Twitter. I know everyone's kind of moving away from Twitter. I got to figure out the other website, Blue Sky or whatever.
Yeah, it's coming.
Blue Sky. It's at Bobby Bancroft, at Casual Hoya. You're at Matt Moderno. Anything else you want to say?
We've got the Department of Hoops too. So if you're looking for this on YouTube and you want to get back to it, hit the subscribe button for us on the channel. There's a bunch of content on there, and we'll have short recaps. And, if I'm going to games, I'm going to record all the post games for the teams and stuff like that too. So if you want to catch up quickly on what happened after the game, great. I'll try to put some practice footage on there and stuff like that as I go. So just, other content kind of all in one place there. So check us out. And we got to get Jihadi on. I got to talk to my guy. He'd be down. Yeah. Such a great part of my childhood when Georgetown was rocking and rolling. Jihadi was just, part of that tradition and of big men. And then he got to stay local. It was like the first time a Georgetown player had done that. Yeah, maybe Jaron Jackson had a little bit, but Jihadi seemed like it was like, oh, wow. We got a Georgetown player that stayed home. But Matt, I want to thank you so much. And we're going to get more of these going, and I'm going to get this out there. I want to thank everyone for listening. Subscribe, do everything that Matt said. You know me on Twitter. Find me there. Go to the Casual Hoya website. And I want to thank everyone for listening. Peace.